Welcome to another episode of Life and Whiskey. Today we are going to look at Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. Okay, so Elijah Craig, Bardstown, Kentucky. It's a Heaven Hill product. This is 127.2 proof, which is 63.62% ABV. So getting up there quite a ways. This is batch number B520. Okay, so 127 proof. So this stuff's going to have a little bit of ethanol in there. But with the higher proof, tends, not always, but tends to come a little more nuance and complexity. Because in the barrel, the higher the proof, the more the impact the barrel's going to have on it as far as getting some of the oak and the tannin out of it. Lower proof whiskey tends to bring out the sweeter flavors from a barrel, so you'll get the vanillas and the caramels if you are down around that 100 to 110 proof when it's in a barrel. So, yeah, so barrel proof, which means they pull it out of the barrel and then just bottle it. And so, in order to be bourbon, it cannot enter an oak barrel, a new, unused white oak barrel at higher than 125 proof. So entry proof, the highest it can be is 125 proof. Now, as time goes on, the first thing that evaporate out is actually the water. So when the water evaporates out, that leaves more alcohol in less volume, which actually bumps up the ABV or the proof. So, depending on how much evaporation you have, you can actually get barrels that went in at, say, 120 or 125, and they'll come out in the 130, 140 range if you get a lot of evaporation. So, something to just think about when we're talking about barrel proof whiskeys. Here in Wyoming, we can pick this up for it's one of the more spendy ones I've had on the show so far, but $48.59 for Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. And let's see what we get here. So the ethanol is not actually dominating in the glass on the nose, which is good. I get cherry though. Cherry's pretty forward in there. More of a fruit cherry. And just a slight hint of like a medicinal cherry, like a cough syrup kind of a cherry. Some oak. And just a hint of corn. And then kind of really deep in there you get some ethanol. So on the nose is not the most complex that I've smelled. So let's see what happens when we take a sip, and then when we go back to nosing, maybe we can pull a little bit more out of it. But whew. Okay. Whoa. Extreme ethanol forward. Lots of burn on both my tongue, in my throat, in my chest. A lot of barrel impact. So you get a lot of barrel spice, tannin in there. Even on the forward notes of the flavor profile, I would say I get ethanol, a little bit of sweet, you get some vanilla, a little bit of caramel in there. Lots of barrel, lots of oak, lots of ethanol in the middle palate. Going into the finish, it dries out. Lots of ethanol still hanging on in there. It actually it dries out, but has a sweet. It dries out like dries out your tongue, not like dry between sweet and dry like wine, but dries out your tongue, dries out your mouth, but has a sweet vanilla tone to it. I'll try that one again. Cherry, very cherry. Forward, oak. So it goes cherry, oak, dry, ethanol, vanilla, some sweetness, black pepper and ethanol to finish it out. A little bit of barrel oak tannin. That's what I get out of it. Yeah, there's a lot of different flavors in there, and it's going to be a struggle to pull out some of them because that ethanol is so heavy in there. Um, a lot of stuff, just because it's heavy in ethanol, doesn't always mean that it presents. This particular one, this particular batch, so batch B520, it's very apparent. The ethanol shows up in spades on this one. In the nose, going back to it though, cherry. Cherry's just dominating. This smells a lot like the 1782 kind of ethanol nail polish remover, acetone, like a high alcohol concentration, and cherry. Like that's really all I'm getting out of it. Cherry and some of the sweetness. The more I'm sitting with it, the more I'm drinking it. Sweetness and cherry, like a black cherry with a hint of caramel, is kind of the first note, but it's really only showing up for a couple of split seconds before it moves into ethanol really quick. So this might be one that would be interesting to sit, dump a little water in it, proof it down a little bit, explore it a little bit more, see where it goes. One pour of this would last you for a while if you were really trying to explore it. Let it open up a little bit, let it evaporate some. It'd be interesting to see where this goes. I have not done that with this whiskey yet. It's a really heavy cherry flavor though. So if that's not the main flavor that you're looking for in a whiskey, maybe this isn't going to be your deal. It's kind of along the lines of Evan Williams, which is not surprising because Heaven Hill is Evan Williams, so all of their products kind of taste pretty similar. Although the Evan Williams tends to have that medicinal cherry flavor, this is more of a fruit cherry that's in there. But yeah, it's a pretty good one. I'm not sure that this is what I'm reaching for if I'm spending, what was it, $48.59 here in Wyoming. I'm not sure that this is what I'm reaching for if I'm going to be dropping that kind of money. I don't mind that it's barrel proof. I don't mind the high alcohol. I just think that there's a better flavor profile out there for my own personal taste than this for that price. So there you go. Elijah Craig barrel proof batch number B520. Not bad by any means, and if you're a cherry fan in your bourbon, this is definitely one to go check out. And if you like high proof stuff, definitely one to check out. But for me, it's not my favorite. So, fourth and final installment of Archery Elk Hunting for 2020. Repeat of the third installment. Wake up early. I went out on the 29th. Season closes the 30th. Drive up the mountain in the dark. Go out and nothing. All morning, not a peep. Showed up, found some, explored. I wanted to explore the same area I was hunting, check out some of the places I hadn't quite gotten to in the first go round. And that's how I hunt a new area. If I've never been somewhere, I kind of make a game plan and go, okay, I want to make sure I check out all this stuff. If I hear a bugle, sure, go chase the bugle, go play that game. Pending hearing something, make my game plan, stick to it, cover some ground, learn stuff, use Onyx and mark wallows, trails, potential bedding cover. If you bump animals, watering holes, rubs, like if you start putting together rubs, you can find rub lines and ridges that are more active or less active with elk sign. So went out, hit the areas I did not hit the first time, learned more, came into a wallow that just stunk like elk, fresh mud on the ground. So I knew the elk had been there that morning, and so I decided to set up and called and called, nothing. again, up the ridge behind me, all of a sudden I can hear an elk hunter making some bugles and whatever else coming in. He kicked up a small little bullwinkle moose that ran up the draw within 20 yards of me, but no elk. So we kind of got together, talked, said, "Hey, I'm gonna go this way and do this. You go, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm gonna go over here and do that." I said, "Great." So we parted ways. Hiked over to where I was gonna go, started exploring new territory. I found more fresh elk signs, so I knew there were animals in the area. But yeah, just came up with nothing. I hunted all the way till 4 o'clock. And that moose was the only animal I'd seen at that point. I found out I had a little bit of cell service, which almost everywhere I hunt, I don't get cell service. So I kind of texted the wife, told her what was going on. Took a brief 20-minute nap, kind of recovered, because at that point I had done, and previously, so the other, hunt number 3, I had done about 6.5 miles, about 3,500 vertical feet. So not 3,500 feet straight up, but like if you add down, up, down, I only count the gain, so I had gained about 3,500 feet. So, if you include the decline, it's roughly 7,000, but decline's not as much work as going up. So 3,500 vertical feet. This hunt, all said and done, I had done closer to 7 miles, and closer to 7,000 vertical feet. So I hit some areas that were a little bit deeper, down and up, and explored some other places. But at 4 o'clock, took my nap, whatever, got up, started walking, started calling, and once again, all of a sudden I hear hoof prints beating the ground, and I see flashes through the timber, and it looked like maybe 3 elk had bolted about 100 yards in front of me. So again, they could see through the timber. So before I even knew they were there, they had picked me off. I followed their tracks a little bit, and it seemed like they had come into the area. So either I called them in, or they had gotten bumped and came into the area, because they were on their feet already. It seemed I didn't bump them out of a bed. Followed their tracks back in, followed them to an area where there was a dead cow elk laying there. So somebody had shot one in the week since my previous hunt. The crows and the gray jays were just having it out. There was a couple hundred crows sitting, or ravens probably, they weren't crows, and a couple hundred gray jays as well. So they're fighting over who got the carcass. Kept pushing around, same plan, be back to the truck by like 6 o'clock, because now it's a week later. You lose that much more daylight post solstice. No, equinox, not solstice. And so we were losing light fairly quick, although we were building into a full moon, so the big moon was rising. But yeah, I started working my way back with about an hour before that 6:30 timeline, and jumped a mule deer buck, and it looked like a doe, but it might have been like a little spike or nubbin. And in this zone, I had to you could only shoot 3 points on one antler or better for mule deer, and he was maybe like this wide and about this tall. Was a 4 point, and so in the West, 4 point means 4 points on one antler. I only say that because in the East, 4 points means a fork horn, 2 points on each side. And so, tried to make a play on them. I bumped them, and in most instances, if you bump a mule deer, they don't, especially in an area where there's not a ton of people all the time, they tend, not always, but they tend to only go 40, 50 yards. Then they'll stop, especially if you bump them by sound and not by smell. If they don't smell you, they'll stop and look and see what's coming on their back trail. And that's what he did. And I kept trying to make a play. I put some trees between us, kept them in line, and I was able to get to like 66 yards, something like that. And I just could never get a shot. He blew a couple times and went like 20, 30 yards. So like all the ground I had gained, he put that much more between us. 15 minutes of playing around trying to get a shot before he finally said screw it and went up and over the ridge. I went up and over the ridge, and at that point the wind had swirled as well, so he'd caught my wind. I tracked him to the rim of the next draw, and I was like, I'm not going to lose 300 feet at this point of elevation to go try and chase this deer. So I continued on my way, another couple hundred yards down the way, bumped two more. Actually, I didn't bump them. They were up and feeding at this point, but one was a really small 3-point that may or may not have been legal. I couldn't quite tell. It depends how big the brow tine was. The other one was a clear 3-point that I definitely could have shot. He was a little bit bigger and whatever. But again, they're about 55 yards, brush between us, no clear shots. Tried to jockey for position, and they just wouldn't give me a shot. And eventually they ended up heading out as the darkness started to close in. And so went all day without seeing anything. Last last 2 hours, saw elk running away and deer running away, with no shot opportunities on any of them. It's one of those deals where, in that particular instance, that's when people start going, "Oh man, I wish it was rifle season instead of archery." Well, I really like archery not only because of the challenge of trying to get close, because if things go right, you can call the animals to you, which things just weren't going right this year, so that didn't work out so well. I thought for sure, being in the prime of the rut, those last two hunts would have been fruitful, but they just weren't responding to calls. They weren't coming to calls. I was surprised on hunt number 3 that the bulls that I bumped, that they didn't come into cows because they were younger bulls, which tend not to be as smart. That doesn't make them dumb. They just tend not to be as smart. And B, it was like the peak prime rut, and it kind of surprised me that they didn't come in. So anyways, that finished it out for me. Thanks to my wife for allowing me all the opportunities that I had. Being able to go for a week and then spend a weekend with her and our son, and then 2 separate days by myself after that. She was watching the kid for me, so being able to do that was awesome. So all in all, I got into elk often throughout the season. I know I didn't mention that. I bumped a lot of elk, and mainly because of wind swirling and because they were not responding to calls, so you didn't know necessarily that they were there. But aside from that, how can you complain about actually being in elk? I've been on many elk hunts where I didn't even see an elk, let alone bump them. So, can't complain about that. It just things weren't working out right. Had one shooting opportunity that first week that just happened to not go in my favor that time. So we're on to rifle season now. So looking forward to that. And along those lines, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. Go ahead, check it out. Drop in the comments below what you can find it for in your area. Please leave a comment about whether or not you've been liking these videos, if you get anything out of them. If you'd like some different subject matter to talk about. I know I've been talking a lot about hunting, kind of my life. But if you guys want to talk about something else or hear my thoughts on something, I'd be more than happy to explore some other categories. And I will take this other directions going in the future. But for now, it's hunting season, so that's what we're talking about. So check out Elijah Craig. Thumbs up, thumbs down, like and subscribe, whatever. And thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will catch you in the next video.